Hey guys, this is Eton Train, and this is the Just a Basic Dude vlog, and I want to show you guys something today that I picked up. It's funny, it was a funny place to find a piece of gear that I wanted. It was at the Bed Bath & Beyond, and my wife and I were in there looking for towels. And fellas, I know that like 85% of the people that watch my channel are guys. Guys, if your wife wants to go and look at towels, just go with her. Just go out, try and make it a good time. Take her out to lunch. If the kids are with you, get them some kids' meals, and make the best of it, because it's going to be a lot. One, you're going to make some brownie points for not complaining. Two, she's going to get some new towels and she's going to be happy. Three, you're just going to have a good time with your family. Don't worry about not being in Bed Bath & Beyond, because it's not a manly man place to be, and you might find something cool, and I did. So this is the Eton FRX1, touted as a first aid and survival radio. Right on the back, you got this little American Red Cross deal right there. And that back there, let's take a look here. This has AM, FM bands and 7 weather bands. Little volume switch here. And it has a flashlight. Pretty decently bright LED. And around that flashlight is a glow-in-the-dark ring, so that you can find this thing in the dark, which is pretty handy. To power this radio, you've got a couple of different options. So under this little rubber flap, to hide it from the weather a little bit, is a, that is not a micro USB. I believe that's called mini. I can't remember. I'm a network tech, and I can't remember all of the USB variants all the time. But this is the old school one, like you would have had on your phone maybe 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, prior to the newer versions of that micro USB or USB-C or micro USB-C, or multitudes of cables that they're using these days. And then also down there you have your headphone jack, regular 3.5mm headphone jack. On the back is another way to power this radio, and it says that 5 minutes, you flip this little bad boy out, it says that 5 minutes of cranking will give you 30 minutes of playtime. Now I can honestly say that without having your radio charged up, it's not going to work at its peak performance. And when you're running that crank, you don't want to just stop it really hard, because you can actually break the internals of that generator. I've seen it. So this little volume control here is also your on-off switch. On and off. Let's take a look, see if I can find something here. We are currently on the FM band, and that's one of the complaints, actually, the cons I had about this radio. There are two things that you look for when you're buying a radio. One is sensitivity, how far away and how many stations can it pick up. The other is selectivity. So in the top end of the FM band on this radio, we have a very strong station out of Yakima, Washington, a 105.7. And unfortunately, the top 4, maybe 4 or 5 stations in the FM band on this radio, the selectivity of this radio is a little bit poor at the top end of the FM band, and you pick up 105.7 on all of the top end bands, because they're not as powerful, and it just bleeds in, it just drifts into all of the stations that you could pick up. So if you're hitting 100.9, which is another station here, 107.3, another station here, on all of those top end above like 99 on the FM band, it bleeds. You wind up getting the same station here because of the potency of 105.7, and also because the radio does not have very good selectivity. What is cool is at night I've picked up some crazy stations. Like I picked up a station out of Springfield, Illinois on this radio one day, which is actually kind of abnormal in any of the modern radios, which this is going to be a modern IC based radio. IC is an integrated circuit chip. They have transistors, but it's different than having the old school transistor radio or even an old tube radio. So on the AM's pretty decent on this. One thing that people don't know, that AM and FM use 2 different antennas on your radio. So if you have a radio at home and it has a nice big telescoping antenna like this, which is kind of cool that it comes out of the side on this radio, it's got little feet on the bottom on that side to just set it down and move your antenna around. That's an FM antenna. AM antennas are generally internal. They're a bar and coil antenna, so it's going to have a ferrite bar, an iron bar, not a steel bar. And that's going to have a copper coil with thousands of wraps of wire on it that has been moved back and forth, and hopefully the factory did a good job of placing that coil on your iron bar for maximum AM reception. And that's why when you move this antenna, if you have your radio out and you're moving this antenna and you're listening to AM, you're not getting anything unless you turn your radio. Because this antenna is not doing anything on FM. This antenna is just, or on AM, pardon me. It's just for FM. And your internal ferrite core and coil antenna, if you turn your radio, it's actually physically attached to the board. So turning the radio is going to change the way you're coming in, the way the station's coming in for you. So let's take a look. See, there's a weather band on this as well. There are 7 weather bands. Let's take a look.
Lows 29 to 34. Wind light variable becoming west around 5 miles an hour overnight.
And those weather bands work with that internal coil and ferrite rod antenna as well.
Saturday, mostly cloudy. A 20% chance of rain in the morning. Highs 38 to 43.
It's going to be warm on Saturday. 38 to 43 is pretty good, but it has been wet here all like for weeks now. We keep getting this weird wintry mix, freezing rain stuff that makes horrible slick in the morning and then just wet after it melts off all day. The AM on this, like I said, is pretty decent. Picked up some cool stuff. With the AM dial, you're going to pick up more stations at night. You're going to get better. You're going to get better reception at night on the AM dial as well. It's just got something to do with the ionosphere that I can't explain in a short review video. Overall, I love this radio. I think that it's solid. It's a good shape. But if I were to go back, this radio was $30, and that's not super cheap, but I think it's pretty accessible to people. Normally, I do cheap gear on the channel, but this was not cheap. I don't think. For what it is, I think the $30 is pretty expensive, except that it's tough. You can feel how solid this thing is in your hands. It feels like it doesn't bend. It doesn't feel like it's going to crush easy. This is a nice solid little radio. But if I could go back, I would get the FRX3. And I might go back and buy one and review it. The FRX3 Eton radio actually has a jack for a full-size USB that you can use your crank to charge your telephone. And I think that's really cool, and that's a huge deal. The radio is a little bit bigger, but this is great. This is something that you buy for $30, throw it in your bug-out bag, and then you can hear what's going on in the world around you. And that's kind of the most important thing about this. You're going to be able to hear emergency broadcasts. You're going to be able to hear things that are going on around you and a little bit further out from you, because you can pick up radio stations from further out. I can pick up radio stations here from a lot of different places around Washington State sometimes, and then even, like I said, on AM dials, sometimes as far away as, Illinois, which is just the strangest thing. It's crazy. Shooting skip is what they call that in CB parlance. And anyway, so I really like this little radio, except for the selectivity on the FM dial, which is a serious problem. I think that it's a problem for a lot of IC radios that I've seen. So I would give this Eton radio because, one, it's tough, it's chargeable, and it works really well, except for that top end of the FM dial. I'm giving this bad boy like a 4 out of 5, maybe even a 4.5 out of 5 on the arbitrary dude blog scale. Yeah. So anyway, guys, this has been Eton Train. This is the Just a Basic Dude blog, and I hope you guys have a great day. Go and look and see what kind of crank radios you can find. They're making them cheaper, and they're making them in mass production now. 10 years ago, these things were pretty expensive, but then they made a bunch of cheap ones. They made some with the Jeep brand name on them. They made a lot of different stuff. This is just the ones that I like because they're tough. They feel good in your hand. They feel like a piece of quality equipment, and they work really well so far. I've had this for a little while, and I've used it. It's another thing. One last thing before I take off out of here. Make sure that you use that battery. Make sure that you discharge it and charge it so that you know that that battery works. Because if you don't charge and discharge that battery will eventually get weak, and you are going to be having a radio that doesn't have a battery in it. So you could just turn the crank and listen to it and pray to God that you can just turn the crank forever. But your battery won't charge unless you use it, man. So, you guys have a great day. This is Eton Train, Just a Basic Dude vlog, and I am out of here. Peace. Have a good one.